Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it, midweek editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Back in studio for a day, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We are loaded up. Tomorrow, back on the road at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. Want to see you out there. Man, what a good time yesterday, and plenty of football to talk today. We'll dive in. Mike Babcock, historian, author, Hall of Famer, Mr. Husker Football, going to join us in about 20 minutes. Mike Schuchart, Shuey, out at Wilderness Ridge. It is a gorgeous golf day in Lincoln, but we're working. We're not dreaming about finding our lost golf ball out at Wilderness Ridge, not quite yet. In hour two, Mr. ESPN Matt Schick will join us. We'll dive into some of the super regionals, the Dave Van Horn, and that quest for a win in, or several, in Omaha continues for the Razorbacks. And more with Matt Schick, with Hurrdat, of course, Schick and Nick, and all of his ESPN duties. We'll talk some Big Red football with him. Numbers to dial up, get involved at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865, where you hear us around the great state of Nebraska. Can stream us, ESPNLincoln.com, and give the email a chance, Chris@HailVarsity.com. I'll be better at reading those, I promise. And can find us on Twitter. Give us a follow at Schmidt_radio, Chris Schmidt, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. What's the day look like for you? You've already got a ball game under your belt.
Yeah, I got the Salt Dogs. They had a midday game. It was daycare day out at Haymarket Park.
Really? Where you just drop your kids off and you go take off, or you stay and watch the ball game and you send them off to right field to play on the slide?
I think you can do either. I think you can do whatever you were to choose there. And it's really interesting because we got the crowd mic, and I keep on texting Michael and talking to her in the breaks, turn the crowd mic down. You can just hear all these little kids' conversations going down.
Those are the best conversations ever. And their conversation is this: do you believe what Athlon picked Nebraska?
I don't
That's
think
what
that
all the
came
4
up,
and 5-year-olds were talking about today at Haymarket Park. That was not part of the conversation?
I don't think. Usually it's like a lazy fly ball to right field that all the kids are screaming for because they think it's a home run, and then it's 100 feet short of the wall. So they all end up
it's a fly out, the old can of corn. But we'll dive into Athlon, get Mike Babcock's thoughts on that as well. Memorial Stadium turning 100. Some memorable moments with Big Red football, and the playlist of all playlists we got to tell you about if you're a Grateful Dead fan. But listen, the question is this for Nebraska football in 2022. The makeover's taken place, okay? And that's new assistants, that's new players, that's new additions, that's new at quarterback. And then you've got some old staples. You don't always get rid of everything when you do a renovation or a revamp. I remember my folks' basement on Tipperary Trail in Lincoln, and that's the house I mainly grew up in. And it was awesome. It was home to me. And then, I don't know, Mom and Dad said, well, let's finish the basement. And I remember that remodel that went on, and next thing you know, wow, there's a living room and there's a room to play pool. We will not incriminate who punched the wall when he lost at pool, but he lives in Gretna. I don't live in Gretna. And then you had a steam shower. I mean, so it was, wow, it was incredible. Now, the wrong person could have gotten a hold of the itinerary in the basement, and it could have been the ugliest looking basement you've ever seen in your life, right? I mean, how does it go? And that's what we're all wondering here. We've laid out the schedule, front end, back end, oh no, with how Nebraska started. Not always great. They've not finished real well except for 2018. And they're somewhere in between with the question marks. Does Nebraska get better quarterback play than they've had, or do they get more help for their quarterback in 2022? And here's a question too: does Nebraska have any difference makers and game wreckers on defense. A guy, offense or defense, that can take over the football game. And you think back to some of those guys that Nebraska's had when they've won and been in a championship game. Defensively, you had Ndamukong Suh, and Suh was incredible, and you had a really tough offense. You had a good run game, but you weren't super trusting throwing the football in 2009. You just weren't. What you had in Team Magic, I mean, he was so good on the ground that big play-wise, in 2012, he was incredible to go along with a pretty good defense, even though you were still new to the Big Ten. And then eventually you got Wisconsin. And then offensively, Nebraska's just not put both sides of the football together along with special teams. But I think on offense, a guy like Trey Palmer could wow. A guy like Anthony Grant could be big time. You could see a real jump in Yant. Ramir Johnson also is really dangerous catching and running the football. But that all stems on getting 2 healthy tackles, figuring out your new center that was a second-round pick. You're replacing that. I air quote when I say replace. And then on the defensive side, what do you have? Well, you've got Ty Robinson that is now a little bit more experienced as a starter. You have 2 really good linebackers in Henrich and Reimers. But, man, they put 100,000 miles on their body last year and were great when you look at the combined tackles. And you've got a guy in Garrett Nelson and Caleb Tanner that have been part of the Chinander defense. They've grown and gotten better each year. Do they have breakout seasons? We touched on Garrett being an All-Big Ten performer. That's the projection by Athlon. But you've added a Devin Drew, an O'Shawn Mathis, and a Stephon Wynn. Is Wynn a guy that can come into the Big Ten and just be a deal breaker for offensive lines on the interior? Is O'Shawn going to have a really good Act 3? He's had 2 really good years in Power 5 when it comes to getting after the quarterback off the edge, hurries, and sacks. And then there's Devin Drew, who was really good at getting towards the quarterback despite just a 3-man rush and don't let anybody, kind of a Diaco defense, so to speak, down at Texas Tech. So we don't have any assurities. There's no Rex, there's no Roy, there's no T Magic, right? There's no Sue that's a known quantity. But can Nebraska be better at some key spots in 2022? If you're trying to hear us on the radio, that has been hit or miss on the AM. FM 101.5 is, I guess, where you go, but stream us, ESPNLincoln.com, just to throw that out there.
Or your favorite streaming app as well. iHeartRadio also has ESPN Lincoln as well as TuneIn. So if you are struggling with that 1480 signal, that's a great way to do it as well. So
we laid out how Nebraska kind of flips this makeover, right? Mm-hmm. With some of the key components. You got the coaching staff, but then we also now dive into Athlon themselves. And Athlon picking, how does this grab you? 5th. I think a 5th, and I think you can still get to a bowl game as the 5th place team in the Big Ten West. What's that do for your head coach's situation where it's win now? Because that's tight to me. You're right at 6 and 6 or 7 and 5. And I understand this. Look at how jumbled the West was last year. How many 9-win teams did you have? You had Wisconsin. You had Minnesota. You had Iowa. I think Iowa was a 10-win team. And they went to the Big Ten championship game. Those were 3. I'm missing somebody. Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue. Purdue won 9 games. And your rundown right now by Athlon is Wisconsin. They got an incredible running back, and they're always good defensively. You just assume their O-line is going to be fine. O'Connell and Purdue with a couple of Iowa wideout transfers Kaz talked about yesterday will help them. Their top receiver, Milton, is ineligible, but they're picked second after losing David Bell and Karlaftis. Mm-hmm. So go figure. But They're second. Iowa comes in third. Minnesota's found ways to win tough ball games. They found ways to win tough ball games in Lincoln. That's why they probably get the nod. And Captain Morgan, I should say, is in his 37th year at quarterback for Minnesota. They have their big-time wideout that's back. They have a stud running back that is returning, Ibrahim. He was really fun to watch until that Achilles early on last year as they opened up with Ohio State. So I can't fault Athlon for looking at what's known and going, yeah, okay, I like Purdue at quarterback. I like Wisconsin's run game. Minnesota just finds a way. Then there's Iowa, special teams and defense, sure. Nebraska could prove us all wrong, and this could all come together, and bang, they win a ton of ball games, and they win the West, sure. But, man, you just haven't seen it. There's proof that you need to physically hold with this team.
Well, while we're comparing this whole rebuild to a basement renovation, the way I see it is Nebraska has moved into a new house, and the basement needed some work. It was pretty ugly down there.
There's a little water damage, old 70s shag carpet down there. And sometimes that's charming. It just takes the right buyer.
And here's the thing, is the right buyer came in, and they decided to renovate the house. And after a couple weekends, they've done all the demolition work. They've put the new stuff in, the new carpet. And you look at the end of it and you go, I still don't quite like it. It's still not quite.
So you got to redo it again.
So you
got a money tree.
Well, maybe people are going to find a way to use it. Maybe as time goes on, it'll improve a little bit. But you get 3 years down the road of owning this home, and nobody still goes down to the basement. It's ugly. It's an eyesore. You're not getting use out of it. So you save up a little bit of money, and you decide to go redo the whole thing. Where Athlon's coming from is they're saying, well, you've already messed up this basement once. Based on how you renovated it the first time around, we don't have any faith that a second renovation is going to help at all. Whereas we, sitting here in Nebraska, go, you know what? I like this new carpet you have picked out for the basement.
Look at the square footage available.
The square footage is great. You've picked out this new carpet that looks like it's going to be better, and you did a better job matching the paint and everything. There's a brand new giant TV down there. You just invest a lot of money, and you think that's going to be a centerpiece of the basement. You see the pieces there, but Athlon is just saying, well, you had the pieces before on this basement renovation. It didn't work out, but this time around, we're not confident, but maybe the people in Nebraska are confident that the basement renovation can be better this time, despite the fact it's the same people doing it.
It all hinges on the offensive line to protect the quarterback. It all hinges on the offensive line to get some wow moments from the running game. And it all hinges on the offensive line, back to that quarterback play, to be able to utilize a guy like Omar Manning and Trey Palmer. Under a guy like Mickey Joseph, man, sky's the limit for a guy like Omar Manning. I mean, think of how physically gifted and the mismatch he is. Nebraska went to him a lot. Not as often as they wanted to, but he had some big plays and some big games and some big moments. And then you factor in a Trey Palmer with him. We'll see where Nebraska's at with the tight ends, but Coach Beckton's got a really good track record of development there. And then you and I both are excited about Anthony Grant. Mm-hmm. Where A.J. Allen we can't sleep on. I know that Ramir Johnson is as tough as it gets. So he's pretty impressive. So Nebraska's quarterback is a question mark with Athlon just because, right? And that's fair. So we turn our attention from current quarterback to former quarterback. We'll have more thoughts on this, but wanted to squeeze in more commentary from Adrian Martinez, a little bit of him. What is this, a podcast he was on?
I believe it was a radio. I'm trying to figure out which radio show it was. It was something on the Sirius XM College Sports Network.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not
College
sure
Sports.
Which show exactly?
The College Sports Playbook had Adrian on, and he touched on his motivation for transferring from Nebraska.
You know, and their narratives I'm fighting against. Yeah. Well, I haven't been to a bowl game, and I haven't had a winning season, you know. Now, football is a team sport, but I play quarterback, and oftentimes, you know, you get associated with those kind of things, and, you know, I want to win. I want to go play in a bowl game, and I want to win a bowl game. So that was another reason why I came here. You know, I feel like we have a great opportunity to win, and that's something if I do and I play the right way, I know we're going to have an opportunity to do. Part of that's not turning over the ball as much. Part of that is being accurate all the time, making the right decisions. And that comes with playing quarterback, yes, but I feel confident in this system and with the progressions I've made that I'll be able to take that next step.
Biggest thing for him, and listen, he's a stand-up dude, class act. This isn't shade. This is maybe a little bit more clickbait. He's not throwing stones at Nebraska. He transferred for a fresh start, and I want to see K-State win as many as they can for the kid next year.
It's a chance to change his narrative. His narrative at Nebraska has been a guy who's been super talented but can't get the job done, can't win, can't come in and lead a drive in the fourth quarter. And, yeah, it's all about a fresh start and getting to a new place that'll give you a new opportunity to change your narrative without the preconceived notions of what you are.
Well, and knee injuries, shoulder surgeries, cracked jaw. I mean, you're not finding a tougher quarterback. That affects your play, or it can affect your play. And quite frankly, if you're dropping back and you're under duress 40% of the time, good luck. Good luck winning any ball games.
Did see a funny tweet that said, imagine trying to tell a college football fan in 1990 that a quarterback was transferring from Nebraska to Kansas State because he wanted to win more.
Ooh. Yeah, 1990 for sure. That was the, I think, first or second year of the Bill Snyder reconstruction, keeping on with the rebuild theme. Mike Babcock's going to be with us. A ton of fun with him next to talk some Big Red football at Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Hey, it's Schmitty. Want to tell you about a fantastic opportunity to work for a rapidly growing company that also enjoys the benefits earned with having competitive, stable history of work over 20 years. FSC. The FSC Edge. It's a leading technology innovator serving governmental agencies. Expert services helping worldwide patent offices meet strict processing and publishing timelines while delivering exceptional quality. They support some of the world's largest patent offices throughout the U.S. and Europe. That includes the European Patent Office, the German Patent and Trademark Office, and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. The only group of companies worldwide to provide such support to all three of these agencies. Working at FSC, you have a chance to work with fun people with great attitudes and learn about patents. You're not on the phone. You're not customer-facing. It's casual dress. And the work environment, it's a new environment with over $2 million in improvements. You have access to generous benefits packages, company support for health and wellness, and you do impactful work on a national scale. Make a difference. Their team's constantly growing, and they're always looking for new people to join their mission. Check out what's available today at jobs@fsc.com.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. A little Casey Jones, Mike Babcock from Hail Varsity with us. We're streaming live ESPN Lincoln's Facebook or ESPN Lincoln Twitter. So College Game Days tweeted out, don't forget how the first points of 2021 were scored, and they're showing the infamous punt, one of many, against or had by Nebraska in the two-pointer for Illinois, and Cam Taylor-Britt trying to get out of the end zone. Babbers, that can't happen in Ireland, can it?
No, it can't. And that's one of the things that I think that I forget to mention when people ask about what has to happen to Nebraska in 2022 to get things turned around, to get that basement, where people are going to think it's a good job of redoing it, is special teams. Nebraska has to make a huge jump in special teams in order to be successful, in order to make Athlon's pick of number 5 inaccurate, to be better than that.
And while we're
special teams is a big important part, I think.
While we're talking the basement comparison here, what part of a basement renovation is special teams? Is that taping up all the door frames and windows and whatnot so your paint job is good? Is that bringing in the contractors to do the carpet so it's all stretched out properly? I mean, what part of a basement renovation is special teams? It's nothing sexy, but it is important.
Get rid of the mold.
Yeah, that's good.
There's some black mold in the corner over there you need to get rid of.
Yeah, we need to get rid of that. But it is. I think special teams, and that's why, Bill Bush, that's his primary responsibility. It's his only responsibility. That was I would guess that was a difficult decision to put one coach solely responsible for one thing, special teams. And that underscores how important it is to get that turned around.
Well, Bush's track record with that is fantastic, and you add a ace recruiter as well, and that's some upside with Nebraska and Bill Bush. Mike Babcock with us. Babbers, how does 5 in the West grab you at first glance?
I don't think it's unreasonable because of everything that you've talked about so far. I mean, Nebraska every year is like, well, we're going to get it turned around this year. No, they didn't get it turned around. You look at last season, and some people will say, well, look at how they lost those games, the one-score games, or, that doesn't matter in the whole context of things. The bottom line is they were still 3-9. And so how do you make a big jump from where you've been in one season in a big change? I think it's reasonable to say that, and it puts a nice motivation for Nebraska if anybody needs any more motivation to say, hey, we're better than that. Okay, then the response is, okay, then prove it, because you haven't proved it up to this point. I mean, the 4-year run that Scott's had so far, in order to find something equivalent to that, you got to go back to Bill Jennings. I mean, it just hasn't been this way since the late 50s. I mean, Devaney replaced Jennings in 62. That's a long time. And Nebraska fans are not used to that. I mean, but again, reasonable. I think it's reasonable based on what's happened so far.
Mike Babcock's with us at MD Babs on Twitter, HailVarsity.com and magazine. We're streaming Facebook Live, ESPN, Facebook Live, and ESPN Lincoln's Twitter feed. So we're checking in with Mr. Husker football. Babbers, we'll get to the yearbook in a moment. Memorial Stadium turns 100 this year. And a long list of really big-time wow moments from Alex Henry to the 200th sellout when Nebraska smoked Colorado. But I want to go back to 83. Elijah and I got a kick out of this. You were there for it, I think. In 1983, the scoring explosion. What can you recall about 48 points against the Buffs in the third quarter? I mean, that's nuts. In 3 minutes and 45 seconds.
Yeah, that's but that's the way that it was, the scoring explosion for a reason. The Iowa State game, look at that thing. Wow, how that went. Colorado, how that went. Just the Minnesota game, think about that. 84-13. Think about that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me that they could do that in one quarter, because look at the other things that they had done, and the reason that they had that nickname. It wasn't misplaced. It wasn't a poor representation of what that team could do. It was remarkable, and I think in the time. Now it would be less remarkable because the game has moved more and more towards the offensive side of things. But back then, it was just incredible what those guys could do. And after you thought you'd seen it, the next week you'd see a game, and, well, that's a little different than what we saw last time. Just all the way, just the way they went. And then to lose the national title in that championship game, as they did, but I think Tom Osborne got as much recognition for going for two and trying to win that game on a national stage than pretty much anything he did, even winning the 3 national championships. Nebraska got a lot of great publicity from the national press after Osborne went for 2 and it didn't succeed.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall, 14-12 at halftime against lowly Colorado. They come out and cover the number in the third. Fryer, 54-yard run. Rozier, 13-yard run. Gill, 17-yard run. Fryer, 34-yard pass. Rozier, 18-yard run. Jeff Smith for the 12-yard run. Shane Swanson, a touchdown from the backup, Nate Mason. And for good measure, Colorado did get in the end zone. Yeah, they got in the end zone. But 48-7.
Yeah, and that was the year, too, that Rozier at Kansas State stepped back into the end zone and gave him a safety, and then
it's 2-0 K-State.
yeah, and it was I forget who it was now. One of the administrators at a function for honoring Devaney and Osborne called what a great person Rozier was for giving them 2 points before they got going there.
Mike Babcock with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Mike, while we're on the topic of Memorial Stadium turning 100, do you have a favorite memory from inside Memorial Stadium? It doesn't have to be a game, but just anything that springs to the top of your memory of just a day or a moment inside Memorial Stadium that really just sticks out to you.
Well, I've said this for my favorite game, and probably it remains the favorite moment, is that Oklahoma game in '78, the first one I covered, Oklahoma, Nebraska. And Nebraska came away with a victory there. But just the experience, because my uncle worked for the university athletic department. He was the equipment manager from about 1965 to 1977, just before I started at the newspaper. So I was around when I was a sophomore at the university. I was around the university with my uncle in the equipment room. I remember helping him put stripes on helmets and putting the ends on the helmets and so forth, doing that kind of thing. So it was like just really cool to actually be there to cover a game after I'd been in the field house in the north end and had an opportunity to kind of walk around and see some things from the inside. But yeah, it's always been kind of a unique place for me. I've got a doorstop here in my office. It's a brick from the north field house when they tore that down. I had a friend that he had connections with the construction company that took it down. So I've got a brick here. I've got a piece from the press box when they redid the press box. Keith Mann gave people that had been working in the media over that time just a piece of the table that you sat in front of with. I think the one I have is number 82. But yeah, it's just always been a special place for me, going clear back. First game I saw, they had the bleachers, was in 58 or 56, somewhere in there, and they had the knothole sections at either end of the stadiums. And to see what it looks like now, but man, what a difference it's been. I always enjoyed sitting in the press box before they put up that thing on the east side, the upper level. You could look out over there, or look down Vine Street, and it was pretty cool. Now you can't see anything because of the blocks. So.
Mike, a thought here on the Hail Varsity Yearbook. It drops this month. Your sit down with Barrett Ruud and the Babcock and Ruud Grateful Dead playlist. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, on Spotify, there's Aaron Sorensen put a Grateful Dead playlist on there that it leads off with 3 or 4 songs that Barrett were his favorites, and then she added some that were mine. But it's interesting. Barrett Ruud, I probably told you this, but Barrett Ruud had told me that he has about 500 burned CDs of Grateful Dead concerts and stuff that he's collected over
the bootlegs, huh?
Yeah, well, the Dead allowed that. You could go to their concerts, you could record them. That was okay. They didn't care. I purchased a vinyl record album or two that were somebody just did them at a concert and put them out as record albums. The Grateful Dead didn't at that time didn't really bother to attack people that did that kind of stuff, so they allowed it. And it was pretty interesting. But so anyway, and one of the things I asked a couple of the linebackers that played for him, were they Grateful Dead fans? And they didn't even know that he was a Grateful Dead fan, and said that they weren't really all that familiar with the music, but it didn't surprise them.
Barrett's got to be feeling pretty good about some of his young kids here, Mike, about a minute. But Henrich and Reimers, the staples on the inside.
Yeah, and I think that they have a good room. So there are guys that could step in. The thing is that the one regret that he said last season, that because of the situation, those guys played. I figured out those guys made a quarter of the tackles, and they were on the field almost all the time. They didn't come off the field, but that a quarter of the total tackles by 2 guys. That's how much they played. But there are other guys that could step in, and there's that kind of preparation, I think, is characteristic of his room, is that the guys are working hard, whether they're playing or not, they're working to be ready. So I think he's got a pretty good room, and that's one of the things that came out of the interviews that I did.
Well, be sure to get the yearbook, get the subscription, hailvarsity.com/subscription. Great sit down. Mike Babcock, Barrett Ruud. We'll have more on the Grateful Dead Babcock Ruud playlist in coming days. Babbers, always fun to talk some ball with you. Thanks for giving us a few minutes, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Next time, Tom Selleck's face.
No, you're good, Babbers. We've already got the mustache here. Mike Schuchart's on the way.
Calling all soccer fans. Union Omaha is back home after an unbelievable showing in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup round of 16. An upset over Minnesota United? That's our team. So join them when they come home May 28th for Educational Outreach Night, presented by Bellevue University. The Owls will face Northern Colorado Hailstorm FC, and after a couple of road matches, will come back on June 18th to face Greenville Triumph SC. It's also Pride Night. We'll see you there.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio listen?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes, that's awesome.
Back to you. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Matt Schick coming up in 25 minutes. ESPN TV, radio, Sirius XM, and, of course, the Schick and Nick podcast. Excited to talk with Schick. We welcome in Mr. Wilderness Ridge as Mike Schuchart joins us on the program. We say hi to Shuey as it's another just banner day to be swinging the clubs out at Wilderness. Shuey, what do you know? How are you, bud?
I'm doing good. Weather's nice.
Yeah, it is. You're taunting us. We can look out the window and just see how nice it is, my friend. I got to find a spot on your deck sometime soon to, just to make sure all the golfers are fixing their divots. How do I put it that way?
That's right. We need somebody in charge of that, too. You'd be just the man.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, I have heard what a divot is on a when you find the green. So tell me about this weekend and what's going on at Wilderness before we dive into some PGA news and notes.
Oh, we got a lot of cool stuff. We had our women's member just finished last weekend. We have our men's member starting this weekend. So some good, exciting competition going on. We have 4 of our pools filled with water.
Ooh.
So, I know it. Swim-up bar is full of water.
Does it need to be tested out, Shuey?
I know it's getting close. So they just have our big lap pool yet to do, and our bodies of water will have water in them. So it's things are coming along nicely.
Well, that is awesome. We're happy for you. Mike Schuchart with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. And, of course, the Aquatic Center is about to be unleashed. That swim-up bar, that lazy river, cold drinks, and yes, it's okay. You will not get frowned upon if there is an umbrella in your drink.
That's for sure.
Shuey, let's dive in here. The Live Tour, and you had Phil Mickelson dressed as I don't want to say Bond villain, but he was all sorts of leather the other day at the press conference. What'd you think of the outfit?
Pretty appropriate. Got to be the villain, baby.
And then Dustin Johnson also, he talked last week, but the news is this, the U.S. Open next week, yesterday under the USGA announced that they're going to have the open nature of the championship ready to go. That means DJ and Phil are welcome to play the U.S. Open. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting to see what transpires here in the next year. You know, the Masters is the one that holds all the cards, in my opinion, on what decisions they make on letting some of these guys play in the event or not. So, and I see the guys that are kind of resigning from the PGA Tour and going over to play there, and you look at all of the guys that are Masters champions, so they're kind of going to put them in a position where they're going to force their hand because it's a lifetime exemption if you win the Masters to be able to play in the Masters. So it's like, are you going to ban these guys? So it's kind of going to be a nice little power struggle here in the next few months to see what kind of restrictions they put on or not. So, and how the PGA then proceeds. If the Masters says it's okay for those guys to play, U.S. Open just said it's okay to play. I guarantee you they're going to play in the British Open. So what does the PGA do going forward? And then what's the PGA Tour do to stop that? It's going to be an interesting power struggle coming up.
What's your gut say about Augusta, and do they, hey, if you have a lifetime exemption, are we going to stand by our word there?
I don't know. What's the legality parts of it? It's like that's what it says in our bylaws. If you win the tournament, you have a lifetime exemption, but now, you're not a PGA Tour member. Do you have to be able to maintain that eligibility to play? You have guys that have won the Masters that are really not, that don't play on the tour anymore, that still play in that event. You have guys that are retired, Sandy Lyles and guys like that. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think they got enough guys going in their direction that it's going to be a lot tougher than I think I anticipated to begin with. I didn't think I'd see as many guys, big-name guys. I said it a long time ago, man, it's all about them putting pressure on the Masters putting pressure on the Tour about if they're going to be able to uphold a lot of these bans. And you got Patrick Reed now going over there with Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson. In fact, they were trying to get Tiger Woods.
What was the number?
It's crazy.
What was the number they threw at Tiger? Because Bryson, of course, according to Dan Rappaport, is going to join the Live Golf for $100 million. $100 million. And you've got this Saudi-backed league. It's going to drop between $400 and $500 million for Bryson, for Phil, and for DJ. I mean, Bryson's kind of a carnival act to watch. That said, $100 million for him. If he's getting $100, what's Tiger, even at his age and in his condition? I mean, what? $500 million? You give him $1 billion?
Well, those three guys combined is what they're giving Tiger plus.
Okay.
Now,
so it's like, do they have just an endless supply of cash?
Yes, they do.
Sometime, doesn't it?
No, not with oil prices, my friend.
Point there.
Mike, I'm looking at this where a lot of these sports leagues that come in trying to compete with the big dog. You think of like the USFL and the AAF in football, and you even have these independent baseball leagues and whatnot. A lot of times their end goal is to try to get a merger with the big league or try to get some sort of affiliation with the big league, but that doesn't seem to be what the Saudis' goals here is. It almost seems like they're trying to overtake the PGA. Do you think that's what their end goal is here, to be the premier sports or the premier golf league of the world, despite not having some of the best, most famous courses?
Well, some of that, because it goes back to Norman. When Norman tried to do this years ago, maybe 20 years ago, he tried to create like a super league, which is superstars, and those were tournaments that they were only eligible to play in, so that's one kind of aspect of it. A little my gut feeling is I think they're trying to position themselves to be on the tour schedule, so it's like they're trying to be part of the PGA Tour. So you are creating kind of a year-round a tour where guys can go play, and there's more events that are played overseas, which I think some of the tours trying to do that. They're trying to broaden and expand, where they play. They've been doing that for the last few years, where they play in the Bahamas and in Mexico and other places like that. So I really don't know. I mean, that's what I thought originally, but the more I look at it, it's like, these guys look like they're just trying to take over. I mean, this is going to be the next PGA Tour.
Saudi's trying to buy good PR, and they're doing that through sports with some of the who's who in the golf world because of their human rights history and not necessarily being the most current of treatment of people. That's my take on it. Shuey, so awesome to spend time with you, bud. Enjoy what's going on at Wilderness. We always appreciate you jumping on, bud.
I appreciate it immensely. Everybody stay safe.
All right, there he is, Mike Schuchart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. We'll wind down hour one next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
You know, some Denver fans are in fear with the new ownership group. We bring in our resident donk fan, Elijah Herbel. I sent this picture to the pharmacist, Jeff, my buddy that's the Denver season ticket holder, and I'm going to get out and see Denver this year. Don't know when. We are talking about the bye week, see the Niners and the Broncos. That might be a Sunday night. Haven't got it figured out yet with the Jaybird crew. But so the picture was this on Facebook. You've got the Denver Bronco insignia with a really toothy, smiling John Elway. And then you have the new logo that is the Walmart Broncos, and it's Gary Substance Abusey. Gary Busey.
I've never heard that nickname before.
Oh, it's an oldie but a goodie. Blame Dolman in the Average Joe Sports Show days. I stole it. It's Gary Substance Abusey. And it's got this crazed look. And Gary Busey used to be doing all these sorts of reality shows and taking hits off of Peace Pipes. And he was in, God, what was the show with Steven Seagal? Under Siege. Right, him and Tommy Lee Jones, and Elijah's like, "Oh, when? Huh? What?" 30 years ago. It was
before my day.
It was a good action flick, the only one, with Steven Seagal. And you have Gary Busey, and he was in some of the Lethal Weapons where he'd hold his arm out and the guy'd fire up a lighter and just burn him, and he'd take it as he was an intimidator, right? He was a tough guy. Did some wet work, right, for some crime dudes in the Lethal Weapon series. But, Elijah, are you concerned that concessions, while they may become cheaper, they may lack in some of the normal soda choices you're used to when you go to the new Mile High? I
mean, I personally don't think Mountain Thunder is a bad substitute for Mountain Dew.
So you're saying give me more Mountain Thunder? Give me more Dr. Thunder instead of Dr. Pepper.
Oh, it's Mountain Lightning, isn't it?
I don't know.
It's Mountain Lightning, Dr. Thunder.
The one thing I've not done, I've been a cheap bastard a lot of my life, but I have not scrimped on soda.
Oh, you're missing out on their Sierra Mist off-brand Twist Up.
Hy-Vee used to have their form of Mountain Dew called Hee Haw, and we used to give my brother trouble for that one all the time.
Hey man, if $8 for a Mountain Dew or $2.50 for a Mountain Lightning, give me that Mountain Lightning.
Give me the 12-pack. Give you the 12-pack of the Mountain Lightning. Shasta was all good back in the day as a kid. Get that for like 10 cents a can. Turn your face purple, but
RC isn't like a Walmart brand, is it?
No, RC's it's its
own thing.
It's its own thing, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what
RC's really good.
I'm curious to see if Walmart goes into the Broncos stadium and takes Coors out of the stadium. I mean,
no chance.
Or Miller,
no chance.
I think Coors is the official beer of
better be. It's just up the road.
It should be.
It's funny with the beer wars when Coors Field would host the All-Star game. Budweiser came in and just decked out both dugouts in Budweiser sponsorships just because of the arrangement Anheuser-Busch had with Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Coors, it's still the All-Star game from Coors Field. Coors got their advertising dollars in there.
Brought to you by Budweiser. Matt Schick and Nick, ESPN, stand out with TV, radio, all that good stuff. We will talk Husker ball and some super regionals next with Schick.
Calling all Storm Chasers fans. A team you never get to see is making their way to Werner Park June 7th through the 12th, and that's the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. It's the first meeting between the two franchises, and there's plenty going on that week. June 9th is the Chasers Community Celebration for Pride Night, presented by PayPal. June 10th is What If Night, where the Storm Chasers will change their name to the Hogs. A little backstory, that was a previous Omaha team and was a potential name change when the franchise franchise was looking to rebrand. It's a battle of pigs versus hogs. You can't have a name change without new jerseys, too. Specialty jerseys will be worn that night, and of course, they'll be autographed and auctioned off. Snag your favorite player June 10th and then run it back on the 11th. It's Salute to Corn Night, presented by the Nebraska Corn Board. It's a celebration of all things corn. Corn on the jerseys, corn in the stands. Trust me, this game will be amazing. See you there.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. That laugh is familiar. We say hi to Matt Schick of Schick and Nick, and of course ESPN Radio, ESPN TV, Sirius XM. Mr. Schick, good to talk to you. It's not quite been 644 days, but it's around there.
Something like that, exactly. Yeah, it's been a while. Good to chat with you, Schmitty. How are you, buddy?
We're good. We are ready for baseball at the Schmidt household. You're ready for baseball on the super regional front, and we'll go there. And some tasty matchups. If you had to circle one of these supers that you're most intrigued by, which one?
Of all the supers that intrigues me the most, I am going with North Carolina against Arkansas. I think that one is pretty tasty, not necessarily for the environment, but because there is a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent on both sides. North Carolina can pitch. They got a really good freshman, Advance Honeycutt, who if he gets to Omaha, he might steal the show. He's a 25 home run, 30 stolen bases player, and he's a freshman. He's just a really good kid who I talked to Scott Forbes, the North Carolina coach, this morning, actually, and he said he's unlike any player he's ever coached in terms of the gifts and everything he's got. And then for an Arkansas team that, you know, the Dave Van Horn angle is always there, trying to get back to Omaha again. Think about where they were a couple of years ago. They dropped the fly ball that would have won them a championship. Last year they lose in the Supers to NC State after putting up 20-plus runs in the first game of the Super. So there's a lot there, and it's an Arkansas team that has found out who it is. They gave up a ton of runs against Oklahoma State, but at the same time, they went through the war. Connor Nolan can pitch. Michael Turner, transfer from Kent State at catcher. Peyton Stovall trying to become who they thought he could be. And Caden Wallace at third has got a hose, man. I mean, he can really play. So that would probably be the one. And then a backup, maybe the 2A. The 1A would be Texas and East Carolina, because I love the quote-unquote little guy, which ECU is not. They're a good baseball team and a good baseball power, but welcoming in Texas, it's rare for a team like ECU to be able to host a super regional against a national power program like a Texas. And for ECU, the storyline of never making it to Omaha despite 32 appearances, that's great. I mean, sign me up for both of those, and that place is going to be absolutely wild at Clark LeClaire Stadium.
You want to go back to Arkansas. That drama around the program was pretty thick. There was a lot of strife, even from some media towards Turner. That was a couple of weeks ago, and man, they have battled through. Turner had an incredible regional. And there's that soft spot for a lot of Nebraska fans. I know it's damn near 20 years, but for Van Horn to get back to Omaha. So they've been so close, and they're that program that you expect to win it that hasn't. Oregon State's always interesting. We've had a lot of fun with Pat Casey over the years. I know he's been gone from there, but Oregon State's fun to watch. And then A&M with their transition, they're right back knocking on the door, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, go back to Michael Turner. So, yeah, you met friends to Arkansas, and then a sports talk radio guy who bashed him. And I covered an Arkansas game and talked to Dave Van Horn about him earlier this season. And when they played Missouri, and going into that game, he's just like, yeah, I can't believe he's not playing pro ball. You know, COVID happened, and the draft was shortened, and so he transfers from Kent State. And he's making himself some money this year. He goes 8 for 18 in the regional with 11 runs batted in and 5 runs scored. And he's a really good defensive player as well. So that Dave Van Horn story and Arkansas story, they look like a team that could get through Chapel Hill. They really, really do. The Texas A&M, angle there is interesting. Louisville and what they did to escape Michigan, as the replay should have been overturned. It should have been Michigan taking a 2-run lead into the ninth, and then maybe it's Michigan going to Texas A&M, which would have been outstanding. But it's not. It's Louisville. And Louisville, and Cam Masterman, the player who hit a big home run against Michigan, said, "We have nothing to lose." He said that going into Texas A&M. And when you've got a really good team that if the rest of the team feels like that, they're not feeling pressure. We're playing with house money, so to speak, because we're going into the higher-ranked seed, the better team, quote-unquote. I like Louisville's chances to go in there. I think Texas A&M's a fairly vulnerable top-5 seed.
Matt Schick with us from ESPN. Find him on Twitter at ESPN_Schick. Also, Schick and Nick with the Hurrdat Family Podcast. It's a must-listen to each week. And Matt, going to dive into some Nebraska football because it is the off-season. Athlon has come out with their prognostications. How does number 5 in the West grab you for Nebraska?
Is that what they have?
Yes, they have Nebraska in at 5. They have Wisconsin 1, Purdue in at 2, and they return Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, and they've got a couple of Iowa transfers in at wide receiver. In at 3 is Iowa, Minnesota in at 4. And then there's the Big Reds sneaking in at number 5. Storm clouds are just a tough black and blue division where anything can happen any week.
Well, I'll tell you, Purdue's going to be a trendy pick going into this season, and they're going to have the opener to figure out whether they're contender or not because they open up a Thursday night at home against Penn State. So how do they look? You'll get a really good gauge, but their schedule is very, very friendly. It's a friendly schedule with many winnable games. I've said this about Nebraska that you pick them anywhere from 2 to 5, and you're probably going to be right. Okay, like either if they go 5th in the division, I think we all know what might happen there at the end of the season. The first half of their schedule is so extremely manageable that you have to stockpile wins early for them because the back half is going to be a really big challenge. And, Nick and I on our podcast were talking about it this week about, is 6 wins enough for Frost? And the knee jerk is, yeah, 6 wins is enough. That's tangible evidence that things are going well. But then the more you think about it, you realize that if they go 6-6, but they start off hot, maybe even if it's 4-2, 5-1, which their schedule indicates that's very likely, and I think anything short of 5-1, 4-2 at the least would be really disappointing. If they go 6-6, then they're going 2-4 on the back end or 1-5 on the back end. And if that happens, you got no momentum. And not all 6-6 schedules are created equal. And so that's where I would be a little cautious. FPI, if you're into the ESPN Football Power Index, says 8-4. And that's probably where I would peg, probably 7-5 to play it safe, just because there are so many unknowns. And I know for that opening game, it's 9.5 for 10 Northwestern. That's just too many unknowns for Nebraska to feel any semblance of confidence. And any that you feel is based on last year and the close games. But a switch, so many switches and so many different coaches, 5 new coaches, 15 new players, and a bunch of those transfers have got to hit. The stability aspect for Nebraska is not there. They don't check that box. But do they check the box at quarterback? Compared to Minnesota, maybe. Compared to Purdue, I don't think so. Compared to Wisconsin, I actually think they might. Compared to Iowa, yes, they absolutely do. So I think in the quarterback check box, it might be there. It might be a push on a couple of teams, but it's probably going to be there. How does the rest of the team look? No clue. There's just too many unknowns.
Matt Schick joining us a few minutes here, Hail Varsity Radio. You mentioned momentum. That's so key, and just think back to year 1, how Nebraska finished. They went 4-8, but they won that Michigan State game. They won a couple of other ball games. They beat Minnesota rather handily, and you felt good going into 2019 to the point where, back to June talk, right? They were picked to win the West, and That didn't go so well. They've not closed against Iowa. Defensively, there's some new faces. You got a front four to figure out, aside from Ty Robinson, with some big time names that came from some really good programs. But Matt, I'm just wondering about chemistry. Can it all mesh, and can you get players on the same page during these summer months, along with the offensive side of the football, the coaching staff on the same side, and then put both of those together and be off and running? Is it too big an ask, or the Mel Tucker comparison? Look what Sparty did a year ago with that portal, and they went 11-2. Tucker's been really good in short amount of spurts wherever he's been. We'll see how Sparty follows up, but I'm interested if Nebraska can do a second act with it. They're going to have to ease some tension here towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I think of Michigan State. I think this year, if they win 9 games, that's a huge achievement. I think there's a step back here. I think you go back to last year and you can poke some holes in what they did, but you know what? You flip a coin and you call heads, and it lands heads 4 out of 5 times. You're going to win a bunch of games, and that's what they did. Nebraska called tails, and it landed heads. There were a bunch of those 50-50 games late, and a bunch of those were self-inflicted wounds. It was a double-sided coin, and Nebraska knew they were using it and couldn't get out of their own way. So to your point about back in 2018, if Nebraska they won 4 of their last 6, right? But if they had won 4 of their first 6, and then the front of the schedule happened at the end, you wouldn't be feeling how you felt going into 2019. So the order of things absolutely matters for momentum. But like you said, it doesn't, not necessarily from season to season, but from game to game. There was that build, and then for some reason it just dropped off. I would say that for the chemistry here, you just thank God there's no COVID this year, right? Like that, like with all this new chemistry, imagine if that hit, you're going through this in 2020. Like, you got to figure this stuff out. You got to get guys together. You got to forge some bonds here with a bunch of guys that are frankly mercenaries, that are here to try and save a program and save themselves and increase their draft stock and go to a better landing spot. I mean, these are, in a lot of ways, some of these players are cast-offs that maybe didn't fit where they were, and now you got to fit, and you got to all fit together. And Michigan State did what it did in large part because Kenneth Walker III was the best player at his position in the country. Does Nebraska have a player like that could get you a win, that could steal a W, that could be the best player on the field? Ndamukong Suh could be that guy in the front 7 that can cover up for a bad offense like they did and come a second away from a conference championship. Does Nebraska have a guy in the front 7 that can wreck a game? Do they have someone offensively that can wreck a game? I don't think they do. But I also think it's going to take time, and you're going to have to allow this program to not just recruit transfers, but to recruit high school players. And I think they'll be able to do that, which is why it's imperative that this staff wins 7 or more games so that they give them another year or 2 to do just that, because I think this is a really good coaching staff. And I hope they get more than 1 year, and I hope they hit the ground running.
Well, you look at what Trev might be thinking and seeing how 2022 goes. You've made some incredible hires. Bill Bush, Mickey Joseph, 2 specifically that have a just phenomenal track record of recruiting and development, and they've worked for some heavy hitters. Coach Applewhite isn't as well known, but that dude's really good. Really good. Was really good at TCU. So you don't want an 03 scenario to happen where you make staff changes and then you don't get a longer runway, but you're working on year 5. So it's interesting, isn't it, with what needs to be happening in Lincoln. You bring in some big-name coaches that can help you get there, but you want to see the next year and years after.
Like, if you make a change after this year, you're 4 coaches in 10 years.
Yeah.
Like if you really think about it, and Trev Alberts has preached stability. So Trev Alberts, and knowing him and hearing what he has to say, is not going to be the kind of guy that goes, okay, I'm just looking at wins and losses. He's going to look at what kind of improvements are we making, and are there signs that this thing is moving? Are there signs within games that it's moving? What's the sign of improvement this year? Playing better in the last 2 minutes instead of playing worse, right? Playing your best football in the fourth quarter instead of crumbling. Making those special teams capitalizing on special teams instead of cashing in your chips on special teams. And that's why I think the two biggest transfers are Bleak Road and Buschini. I mean, if those guys are upgrades, if you can get your kicker and punter squared away and they're not costing you games and they're a net even for Nebraska, then I think this team is at the minimum making a bowl game. And they would have made one last year with those two guys if those guys are upgrades or just a neutral asset. Then figure it out. And that's where the frustration comes in. So, yeah, I think it's going to be just every week is going to be an adventure. And who would have thought 20, 25 years ago that you'd be sitting here thinking, geez, 6 games will be great. But life comes at you fast, man. And that's kind of where Nebraska is.
Matt Schick with us, ESPN, and, of course, Schick and Nick. Matt, a thought here before we say goodbye while we're into projections and predictions. How your Bills going to be, man?
I'm a little leery of this preseason to the best team in the NFL. I think people like to really get ahead of themselves. I think they're there. I think they're close. I think it's like a coin flip thing, right? You win that coin toss against Kansas City, maybe you're winning the Super Bowl. Things happen quickly. I do think that they are a top 5 team, and I think that, anything short of home field advantage throughout the playoffs in the AFC would be a big disappointment. I think Kansas City takes a half step back. He always looks like Nebraska in the West. Who's taking a step forward? Who's taking a step back? And how does that impact your steps that you're making? I think the Bills will be just as good as they were last year. And then how's everyone else thinking? Tyreek Hill, you take him away from Kansas City, I'm not as scared. So give me Buffalo, give me AFC Championship, give me Super Bowl, or don't even play the season, Schmidt. That's where we're at here.
There you go. All or nothing. Love it. Matt Schick with us. Matt, take care. Thanks so much for a few minutes.
Appreciate it, buddy. Any single time. Thank you.
Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com. Just try me. Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. Good stuff from Matt Schick. We'll have that posted, ESPN Lincoln On Demand, on Facebook and, of course, on Twitter. The full interview. Also, Mike Babcock, Mike Schuchart, a Jock Doc coming up with Dr. Ben Woodhead shortly. Open for you right now at 466-377-6800-825-5865. So the theme today has been remodel, rebuild, redo, right? I mean, that's, if you don't like how it looks, there's potential for a redo, right, in 2022. You can always go redo what you fixed up or tried to remodel, or you can just say, yeah, this came together well with the remodel. We talk about new players and new coaches for Nebraska. It's all in reference, thank you, Athlon, for picking Nebraska 5th. And there's still I don't know the percentage, but there won't be a section of Nebraska fans, because of that red end, because of what the program's been, not what it is, but what it's been, that isn't pissed and offended at being picked 5th when there's no evidence that they should be first. You can talk maybe second. You can talk yourself into anything, good, bad, or ugly.
And while we're on the topic of a remodel here, I think, well, I've had the chance, I'm not sure about you, but I've had the chance to renovate a few homes in my life as a family growing up.
You have a thick mustache? Yes, I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I started my first home remodels when I was in 5th grade. So we did that one.
Here, Elijah, here's a sledgehammer.
Exactly.
Go to work.
It was a great time. You're just going to go to town on the wall, sledgehammer, knock out all that lath and plaster. Just beautiful, beautiful stuff. But anyway, I digress.
Demo.
Part of that demo process and part of what we're seeing this offseason is you're going to take that wall down and you're going to see and you're going to look behind the wall and say, the question is, oh no, is there structural damage here? Is there structural issues behind this wall we're trying to renovate? And that's one of the things we're going to find out this year is you've taken out this wall, which, I mean, you could also say you've also taken out that same wall 4 years ago, but that's whatever. We're trying to make a good little
analogy.
That's the word I was looking for. And you're going to take out that wall this offseason and try to put up a new wall or put up some new wallpaper, put up some drywall, what have you. And the question is in the process of tearing out that wall, are you going to find out that there are structural problems here that are going to require a lot more work than what a 1-year facelift can do, than what a couple transfers can do, what a new quarterback can do, a new offensive coordinator? Are there deeper problems within this program than that? And I think that's one of the questions that's going to be answered this year, because we know, based on the transfers they've brought in, based on the people we know are already in the program, there is talent within this program. And I would argue, I know football's not played on paper, but on paper, there's enough talent on this football team to lead you to at least a bowl game. 6-6 should be a bare minimum requirement for this football team. The question is, are there structural problems behind this talent that you have in the program?
Well, and you and I both know step one was the demo. Mm-hmm. You've kind of done that to your coaching staff already. You've done that to your roster, and you for whatever reason, you didn't do it sooner. That's the issue, the new versus the old. And it's not fair is maybe a objectable word, but it's not fair based on what you brought in to make a determination with all these new parts in just a year or even 6 games. But the guy that's in charge of the projects been the homeowner for 5 years. And that's the rub.
You've brought in new subcontractors to do some work for you.
Yes.
And the thing
he hired the old ones.
Yeah, if these new subcontractors are coming in, they're still not getting the job done. This homeowner, if now you're looking for somebody, if it's like you're hiring out your contract work here, you're the guy you've brought in to do the work has brought in new subcontractors that are going to do the job well. But the thing is you're running out of patience as the homeowner. You're looking at it and you're going, well, these new subcontractors you brought in aren't doing the job too. Maybe I should just find somebody completely new to renovate this home.
And I think your new subcontractors or coaches are quite capable and will do the job. Mm-hmm. I'm very confident in that. It's just who are they doing the job for? Scott or somebody else? So, interesting question in the Hail Varsity mailbag with the Nebraska team. And Sal wrote in, every Monday you have Steve Marek put out questions on Twitter. He takes the email bag or the Twitter bag, and they turn it around for a really good piece with HailVarsity.com, the mailbag here. And here's the question. In 2022 Nebraska football, a program or a team is what Sal's asking. In my opinion, it's a team built to win now, and you will probably like to have a program, but does it have enough in place, or will it have to build a team each offseason? So Sal asks a good question. You don't want Nebraska football to turn into what Nebraska basketball had been, with constant roster resets and a new group of dudes every year. You'll have some new. You'll have some departure because of the portal, and you'll have an advantage right now with NIL. So you're going to have transition. That'll be a thing. It is a thing in college football and college basketball. You're seeing it in college baseball with Cody Frank hitting the portal. So right now you've got a chance to get this flipped for the postseason for Nebraska. But long term, you can't live that way. You'll live and die by the sword of the portal. And you don't want that volatility of 1 year you're up. You don't want to be, if you're a Nebraska football fan, you'd love to be Northwestern when they're going 9-3, 10-2, but you don't want the other side of it here, built for a year, then you get smacked and you have to reload to the tune of 3-9. And then bang, you're back up at 9-4, 10-3.
And that's the question that Mel Tucker is trying to answer within his own football team this season is, what was 2021 your team? Was it a good team, or was it the start of building a program? And 2022 is what's going to answer that. I'm not sure if we'll know that here in the next 6 months, next
springboard.
Year. Yeah, it is.
I mean, that to do that and then not keep. I think it's unfair to say, Mel, you're going 11-2 every year. Maybe he's that good. I don't know. But for them, if Sparty gets back to that 9-3, 8-4, 9-3, 10-2 window, or even a 7-5, but they beat Michigan, or they're somewhere in the team. Listen, Athlon's picking Sparty in front of Michigan State. Is that recency, or is that a belief? Because you've seen the Penn State program drift a bit. They had their window to take down Ohio State about 3 straight years. They did once, kind of flukily, with that blocked punt, if you remember back to that, on a night game in Happy Valley. And then they were right there in a couple of shootouts in back-to-back years. And then they just haven't been able to get over the hump. They've been really good, but they've also stumbled. I mean, they've not been – they may have peaked, right, with that Rose Bowl game, with that Big Ten championship season. They followed it up, and when I talk about Penn State in the form of, well, they're not just getting it done. Listen, they're still top 15, top 10, but they've kind of moved out of that top 5 where they were living in that region briefly, and you just wondered if it was going to get sustained or not. Sustainability is very big for Nebraska football, and can you sustain yourself as a postseason team? And you and I both never thought we'd be talking about this, more so me than you. You've seen the ups and downs. I only saw good to great, and that great's gone to good, to okay, to average, then to bad. And I don't classify last year as bad. No, I don't. I don't, because bad to me is going 3-9, 4-8, even 5-7, and getting annihilated, getting embarrassed and quitting and not looking like you want to play.
I don't think the team last year was bad, but I don't think you can argue that the season as a whole was bad.
Well, the season was bad. The results were very frustrating.
But the team wasn't bad.
No, they were, and there's enough guys in the NFL right now to prove that they weren't bad. Okay, so no, I mean the results were bad, but it wasn't a bad team, and that's so weird. We sound crazy drunk talking like this. You do.
Yeah, we do.
3-3 and
promise we're not.
They're not a bad team. Well, what the hell do you mean they finished? No, really. They had bad moments. They had bad finishes. They weren't clutch.
But they still have a positive score differential on the year,
which is
That's the case in point right there of this was not a bad football team. Were they a good football team? I don't think you can say that either.
No, absolutely
not. A good football team finds a way to win football games.
At least a couple of them.
But I mean, the rosters and the teams themselves if you were to take this Husker football team from last season, I guess I should say, and pair them up against the 2017 Mike Riley football team, I think the football team from last year beats Mike Riley's squad 45-7.
Yeah, because
I think they really beat the brakes off of them.
Yeah, well, and the reason they do that is just because of how you had some real give a damn problems, or at least confidence issues in 17.
I mean, 17 is my definition of that's a bad football team.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the standard Nebraska of if you have to be the 2017 levels of Nebraska to be, for me to say, yeah, you're
bad. A bad football team. No, I totally agree. So when we get back to the point here, is it a program or is it a team? Well, it's a team that needs to turn the corner to become a air quote program again. You need to get to 7 or 8 this year, stabilize, feel pretty good, get some M-word, some momentum, right, and then take off from here. And it's never going to be easy in the West, or if you do away with divisions where you're always chasing Ohio State, can you get to that second place spot or build up to be good enough? I don't know that you'll ever out-talent Ohio State, but maybe someday you'll be able to out-tough Ohio State. because they've been vulnerable in their air quote off years of going 11-2 and, well, I guess we got to go to the Rose Bowl instead of the college football playoff. No, that's how you're gonna get it done in the Big Ten. Is rarely will you out talent your Ohio State or Michigan, but you can have a couple of dudes that'll out tough.
I mean, it's how Nebraska's been getting beat the past couple of years, where I think on paper Nebraska has had more talent than, say, the Purdue's and Illinois of the world. But what did Illinois do last year? They out-executed Nebraska and they out-toughed Nebraska.
Exactly. We'll get you patched up here with Dr. Ben Woodhead. A Jock Doc's on the way. Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. We say hi to Dr. Ben Woodhead, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Ben, how's the week?
It's going good so far. The weather's looking up and not much to complain about.
Well, it is pretty pleasant outside. Now, Mets fans are sweating right now. Their slugger, Pete Alonso, had to leave last night's game, 7-0 rip to San Diego. He got hit by a pitch and then fell awkwardly. Yu Darvish going high and tight on him on that right wrist. And, man, let's talk about some of the next few days for Pete Alonso. X-rays, though, Dr. Ben did come back negative.
Yeah, and so the X-rays are an initial study that you can rule out anything big or bad. So it's basically just looking at the bones. And so it tells you whether there's a break in the bone. Sometimes it's even hard to see like a hairline fracture, though. So it really just gives you an initial impression of whether anything really bad has happened. Now, the hard part is that the X-rays aren't going to show you much in terms of the tendons, the ligaments, the soft tissue, the muscles, anything like that. And so I would suspect they're going to look into that over the course of the next couple of days.
If we're keeping score at home, the Mets have been hit by 40 pitches this year. Pete Alonso's been hit 7 times. So I don't know that he's going to change his approach, and he'll keep setting up shop where he does near the plate. But as we look at some potential injury long-term effects, okay, the X-rays are negative. You touched on the breakage part, but from a ligament standpoint, Dr. Ben, and also just some lingering issues, what could be in store for Pete?
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this in the past. You know, sometimes it's almost better to have a bony injury, because once that break or once that fracture heals, you know, a lot of these athletes can go back as tolerated. Some of these ligament and tendon type of issues, they can really linger on because the soft tissue takes a lot longer to heal. And then when these tendons or cartilage injuries happen, you know, sometimes these even require a surgical procedure. Now, it's hard to tell what exactly happened to him without having, you know, a confirmed MRI or any type of strain or tear, but those are certainly the things that you start looking at and being concerned about.
Dr. Ben Woodhead joining us at Jock Doc Wednesday. Nebraska Orthopedic Center, Pete Alonso, a wrist injury, not only hit, but then falling awkward. It's one thing to get hit by a baseball, but it could be more dangerous falling. You put your wrist out, Dr. Ben, and bad things could happen that way.
Yeah, and so falling onto an outstretched hand is actually a classic type of injury, and it can actually injure a couple different things in the wrist. So you can actually get some hairline fractures in some of the wrist bones, which can actually go unnoticed. on an x-ray. And so that can only be confirmed with an MRI. And, if that truly happened, those are some fractures that can actually take a lot longer to heal. The other thing is when you fall into an outstretched hand, there's some ligaments and there's some cartilage within the wrist bone itself that you can actually tear. We've kind of talked about meniscus tears in the knee in the past, and there's some cartilage issues in the wrist that are quite similar and can cause some pain that sometimes even require surgery.
When you have to do an intervention and you get MRI results back and say it is a hairline, how often do you let the hairline heal versus deciding to go in and do surgery on wrist or that hand area? What's the outlook like? And I know it depends case by case.
Yeah, and so there's multiple bones in the wrist that can be broken. There's actually one that you really don't want to miss. It's called the scaphoid bone, and so that's actually a bone that you can fall onto an outstretched hand and actually have a hairline fracture, and it sometimes won't heal without surgery. And so that's one thing, if that is where his tenderness or his symptoms are, that they're really going to want to rule out, because with an arm that you're using a lot, sometimes early surgical intervention actually is preferred because it'll allow these athletes to heal quicker.
Let's talk about some of the lingering effects. Say he just has to take a couple of days off. Is this going to hamper his ability to hold the bat, is tight, grip it as hard as he would like, or even when it comes to throwing a baseball? Are these two issues potentially with this sore wrist?
Yeah, so if he certainly has a sprain or a strain of the ligaments in the wrist, one of the things that I'd be concerned about is absolutely grip strength. And so that is something that really time will tell. If the MRI comes back as there's just some swelling and nothing really torn, and he does have a strain, it's going to be rest, anti-inflammatories, icing, and hoping that it heals sooner than later. And so sometimes those can nag, though, for weeks on end and even months. And he might not retain grip strength for, a couple months out, which severely could limit his batting.
Grip strength so key, especially when you look at Pete. He's a big-time slugger. Dr. Ben Woodhead with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Pete Alonso dinged on the right wrist yesterday 7 times this season, hit by a pitch. X-rays negative, still waiting on MRI news. And you mentioned some of the treatment with anti-inflammatory and icing. There any stretches or exercises that you prescribe or any type of therapy that can go on, physical type therapy that can be worked on to get his wrist either determine where the discomfort is specifically or just stretch it out so it's a little bit more usable?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. And so if it truly is a strain and you're waiting for that healing potential, the biggest thing is that he doesn't want to lose any motion or any of the strength that he does have. So in these early phases, it's just to kind of maintain the baseline that he's at while he's waiting for the soft tissue to heal. And so even if it was something similar to like a bone bruise, which is essentially like a hairline fracture, you're still waiting for all those cells in the body to heal. And while you're doing that, you just don't want to lose any of his motion, any of the strength that he does have. And so he's going to be working with a hand therapist and other types of providers that are going to maintain that while he's awaiting the healing.
If this is just a sprain or strain, what's the timeline?
If it's just a sprain or a strain, he'll probably be allowed to get back into activity to tolerance. So once the initial swelling calms down and the inflammation starts improving, he should be able to get back once his symptoms allow it, once his grip strength comes back, once he's able to throw a ball. And so then you just allow basically pain to be the guide, and that's best case scenario.
Real quick, any protective gear? I mean, you can wear armor up to the plate. Anything out there that Pete may look at getting for that wrist?
Yeah, so it depends on where his actual pain is. If it's a thumb or if it's a finger, they can do things such which is buddy taping. The hard part with wearing a wrist brace is that it's going to certainly limit his grip strength, and so I would suspect that will not be a viable option. But if there's taping, different types of taping techniques that will help stabilize that, or even help with his grip, that would certainly be an option. Much of that depends on where his actual pain is and what they find on the MRI.
Dr. Ben, thanks for the time today.
My pleasure, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Like what you hear, high-quality radio and podcast, just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time reminder, we are going to be at the Hail Varsity Club tomorrow in La Vista, just up the road from Embassy Suites as you get into Omaha. Junior's off to play Westside, weather permitting, tomorrow night at 8. So we'll be there 4 to 6, getting you ready. Stop by, check out the Wagyu burger, get a pizza, some munchies that are really awesome. The charcuterie board is undefeated, and they got a cold beer for you. Or if you want a mixed drink, a little vodka lemonade, smile about that. But come check out the Hail Varsity Club. A really cool setup, and we're excited to be there. Great setup for TVs to catch your favorite games. On the horn tonight, you have Golden State, Boston, Game 3. Steak and a beer is looming, Elijah. So
oh, Lord.
Get ready to make your pick. First, though, buckle up. Use your seatbelt. When you do so, it saves lives, and it prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up, a message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. So, what we have is this. Golden State dropped the nuke in Game 2. Good stuff from Doris Burke earlier on what needs to happen with Clay, and that's more catch and shoot versus off the dribble. He's not shooting well through 2 games. Boston went off from three-point land. Horford was incredible. Boston didn't shoot bad from 3, but they didn't limit Golden State like they needed to. And the turnovers were a big time. 26 points off of Celtic turnovers for Golden State. Right now, our old buddy Garth Glisman will be in the, well, I can't call it the Garden anymore, but I don't even know if it's the Fleet Center anymore. Point is Boston's at home and they're favored by 3.5. Are you taking those points? You think Golden State forges forward to get a road win, Elijah? What's the over-under at? We need to talk to our old boy Danny Burke on that.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I wish we could talk to Danny before this so I could sound smarter when I'm making my steak and a beer bet. The total is set at 214.
Okay.
So we got the
over-under. 214.5 or 214 solid?
214 flat.
Okay.
I would go... I would leave. So I am terrified of making the first choice because, as we've talked about here, whoever has made the choice,
you're calling heads, and it's been tails.
It's been tails. So that luck is bound to change. I would lean under 214, and I'd take the Celtics to cover 3.5.
Really? I'll take Golden State in the 3.5, and I'll take the over. Steak and a beer. You've won 1. Can you win 2 in a row?
The parlay makes it dangerous here because then we could both be wrong. I'll take the Celtics by. We could do 2 separate.
Okay.
2 separate steak and
one
beer.
For the steak, one for the beer.
Yeah, exactly. So for the steak, I'll take Celtics minus 3.5, and then for the beer, I'll take under 214.
Okay, done.
Boom. Look at that. I made the pick, so I'm guaranteed
beer's going to taste cold. That steak will be marvelous.
I wish we had our all-time results here from like back to when I started back here.
So do I.
We're like, I've been here over 3 years now.
Mm-hmm. It's felt longer for you, but yes.
You're not wrong.
Wow.
That's not because of you. It's because of the seasons Husker football has been having. But
try anything past 2015, my friend.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I'd like to see the
Lying
all-time
to
results.
me about doing time.
I feel like you're winning the all-time results of steak and a beer, though, but I guess we'll never know.
We'll have to do a better job of scorekeeping. Tomorrow, Hail Varsity Club. See you in La Vista.
A Hurrdat Media Production.